It's shortly after the start of an event. These people are solving problems. Where am I now? Which direction do I go in next? How far is it to the first control? Still and confident in the mind, quick but economical in action. That is orienteering. They are in a group but on their own, a contest with oneself. Now is decision time. Time to make compass bearings, navigate by landmarks, and all of it in unfamiliar country. It's mentally demanding, but a flustered competitor can make mistakes. That costs you time, so you try harder, become more exhausted, make more mistakes. A good orienteer is calm of mind. That makes for fewer mistakes in judgment. The body works no harder than it has to in achieving solutions to the problems the course poses. Mankind has been interested in the balance between body and mind for centuries. The ancient Chinese martial art of Tai Chi is the source of the adage, "Be still as a mountain, move like a river." Tai Chi is a choreographed set of slow movements. It is said to promote a physical and mental balance. In the forest, orienteers seek the path of least resistance, a fluid, mistake-free run. Concentration is vital. Tai Chi fosters a relaxed concentration, almost a meditation, while orienteering requires relaxation for an open, receptive mind and a thorough physical warm-up for the rigors ahead. Orienteering has an all-embracing appeal. This is a sport as much for the over 60s as it is for young children. As you stand at the starting line, your journey is before you. You can only know which way you face and little more. A start official lays the problem sheet at your feet. The clock counts down the seconds until you can look at the map. At that moment, mind and body go into action.
The physical part's just incidental. You just have to keep running as fast as you can, but it's what happens in your head that counts. So the calmer I can be at this stage, the better. And I start fairly slowly, make sure of the first one, and after that try to run within my capacity. Because once I go too fast, not enough oxygen to the head, and that's when I can do silly things.
Orienteering originated in Sweden. It has evolved there and grown to become a huge participating sport. This is the Finnish area of the annual Swedish O-ringen, an event which takes place over 5 days, attracting more than 20,000 competitors. The quality of the maps is what makes orienteering possible. Without large-scale, detailed maps, it would be no more than a jog in the forest. Swedish forest is typically detailed on the ground. The maps display this detail, so finding one's way here is intriguing.
Ja, vad ska man säga att kartritningen är väl det som egentligen har gjort sporten tillgänglig för alla. I och med att man har fått egenritade kartor. Alla kan lära sig förstå kartorna, och där kan man se vissa paralleller med Australien ju, att när de fick sina färgkartor så började de också komma igång.
Auden Freestad first orienteered in Scotland in 1941. He's one of the sport's pioneers in Australia. A keen competitor in the men's 60 years and over class, he enjoys running against his countrymen.
I think some of the Swedes which were out there in the beginning started off especially around Canberra. I think they had a terrific side in orienteering. That's when it really come off the ground.
The earliest Australian maps were produced in black and white. Scandinavian 5-colour map making transformed the result.
The maps they produce today is much better than we had before. The details are better, and I think some of the terrain they pick for it is also much better.
Australian orienteering maps for these World Championships reached a new standard of quality. More than 20 were produced to International Orienteering Federation standards. They cover a diverse range of terrains and represent tens of years of work hours by field workers and cartographers. Maps like these begin in the air. Aerial photography generates the necessary bird's eye view, which is translated into contours on a basic map by a process called photogrammetry.
Photogrammetry uses aerial photographs, which an aeroplane takes flying in a line. The photographs overlap, and where those photographs overlap, you're able to see a stereo vision. Once you set the photos in the plotter, you effectively have the position the aeroplane was in when it took the photographs. That might be 600 metres or 800 metres or more apart. So as you look through the machine, your eyes are 600 or 800 metres apart, looking down onto the model. Where the overlap in the photos occurs, you're able to see through dimension once you've set the photos up, recreating the position of the aeroplane.
The base map produced here would be of little use to a runner in the bush. An orienteer navigates by landmarks as small as 1 metre high. A field worker is now needed to walk almost every inch of the ground recorded from the air. Steve Key learnt the craft of field working both in Australia and Scandinavia. He took on the mammoth task of producing maps for the World Championships in Australia.
With Steve Key working now, I think, for about 3 years, just doing nothing else but making maps. He has developed a good skill in fieldwork, and he has now more or less set the standard for the interpretation of the bush as he sees it. And I presume now that the other field workers will, and they should, follow his interpretation. So all the maps being made now in the next 2-3 years will be made with that kind of interpretation.
How the vegetation is represented, where bare rock becomes cliffs, how to show the boulders. These are some of the decisions to be made. The three-dimensional landscape must be brought to 2 dimensions on paper by the map maker.
Process is to
to separate the compiled master map into the colours. You pick off the brown and draw that like we have here, the black, the grey, the greens, the blues and yellows. You separate the colours in your artwork and then get negatives made, and then we have a print. For something like the World Championships, it's best to print the map well before to see whether it's okay and then print it again. In fact, other World Championships like Denmark and Hungary and that, they printed the map 4 or 5 times before they were satisfied.
Once a first draft of the map is printed, the sites for controls are carefully chosen. Controls are the checkpoints that regulate a competitor's course.
You must pick something that's clearly legible on the map and clearly identifiable on the ground. That makes it fair in itself. And the basic rule everywhere throughout the world is once the people can see the feature, then they should be able to see the control without having to look around at all. So we don't hide anything, you just keep it out in the open. It's getting to the point that's the hard part.
The point the competitors must go to is the centre of the circle on the map. They also carry control descriptions which are made up of symbols. Control 4 of the women's course is a flag labelled DD. The flag is on a knoll or hill. When an orienteer arrives at a control flag, they know if it is the correct one to punch by reading the code. Two international technical advisors worked with Steve Key and Alex Tarr to set the courses. They had this unique bushland to work with.
You try to give the hardest problem you can give, but sometimes because the map's maybe not always perfect or the terrain has something that's a little bit unpredictable, then you avoid this. In the forest we have for this World Championships, because there's so much thick forest, it's one areas we had to avoid where they would just get caught up in the thick bush and lose half a minute bashing through something.
Scrutinising the forest for many months meant that Steve had time to get to know its moods.
The forest is called the Kiura State Park, and Kiura is the Aboriginal name for the mountain that dominates the whole park, and it means in English terms shining mountain. And it does when the sun shines on it.
Madeleine Sevier will be one of Australia's competitors at the World Championship. She works as an actuarial clerk in the city and is lucky in having a family who understand the demands of world-class orienteering training.
Madeleine comes from a long line of athletes going back to the 1850s in Australia. The family has been involved principally in racing and also foot running, football, those things. It skipped my generation, but sporting prowess has re-emerged in Madeleine's generation.
To train, Madeleine has to travel from the city to areas set down by the organisers as similar to the championship area. Getting to know the Australian bush was part of the training for international competitors. Their perception of the bush is fascinating.
I came over a little early to train and trained in Kangaroo Crossing, and I'm glad I did, because it would have been a bit of a cultural shock. I didn't know that Australia forest would be so grey. We have 40 shades of green in Ireland, you see, and the rock merges with the grey of the forest, and so it's a bit difficult for us.
The bush and maps are very different from Yugoslavian forest.
Ja sam inače takmičar iz Jugoslavije i htio bih samo da spomenem to. Danas kad sam bio na treningu, najviše me u Australiji to iznenadilo, u stvari oduševilo. Kada sam trenirao sa mapom, ugledao sam ispred sebe ovaj par kengura. To me je toliko oduševilo da sam i pomislio kad bi ja imao tu snagu kao što oni skakuću, vjerojatno bi bio prvak svijeta.
The best orienteers in Scandinavia, they train maybe more in difficult terrain, difficult orienteering terrain than people normally does in other countries, because we have very difficult terrain, orienteering technical terrain everywhere. Here you can find it in some places, but a lot of maps around in Australia are easy orienteering for us. So that's good for us that when we start to learn orienteering, then we have to learn it in this difficult type of terrain.
Despite the large difference in experience and opportunity, orienteering appeals universally. There's always something to learn.
でもそう、ああいうふうになんかどこでも通れるってのは本当なんかこう、日本だってルート決めたらもうそれっきりじゃない、変えることほとんどないじゃない。でもなんかこうこっちだとやっぱあっちよりも見ながらねこうルートを変えられるっていうのはすごい魅力だった。
でも道がやっぱり多いから林の中入るよりも多少回り道の道確実で速く走ってる道を走ってる方が結局は速いってことが多いけど、ここではそれが通用しなかったから林の中を走るしかない。
Maurice Ongania won the Australian Championship in 1979. Living with his Australian-Italian family in Canberra has given him the opportunity to compete and train in Europe.
Victorian, that's the reason. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit wet, isn't it? I mean, I haven't been to Victoria when it hasn't been wet. 2 fine days.
Well, it is winter. Yeah. You know, they talk about the organisers talk about giving nothing away. You know, not giving the Australians any advantages in any way. You know, and you look at the weather. You know, it's just like Europe. I do sort of run better in major events because, well, it's the excitement that brings out that extra stride. I don't do anything special. I just get out there, the map's in front of me, and usually the terrain's very challenging, and I enjoy a challenge. You find that the course setter has set you problems, and really what you're doing is trying to interpret those problems as quickly as possible, and then finding a solution for it. In a way, outsmarting the course setter. It's impossible, he always gets you in the end.
Years of training for competitors, 6 years of preparation for the organisers. Bendigo was ready as well. This spring afternoon in town, the procession was certainly different, even if the townsfolk were a little perplexed about just what these orienteers were going to do. Their opening ceremony had a spirit of freshness that was worth watching.
During the 1985 World Orienteering Championships officially open.
At the two start areas and the finish, the preparations are being completed. There is still control by the organisers over who knows the exact location of these points.
Yeah, so
everything has a schedule.
Two toilets there, changing tent there.
When you put the tents up, Libby, place them down the valley.
The competitors have finished training. Clothing and equipment are prepared and checked. Most have a personalised training programme. Now's the time for those individual preparations, including that secret food or drink that may make the difference in 2 days' time. On those 2 days, events called models are held. These are events where the maps and terrain are as close to the actual race conditions as possible. It's an opportunity for each runner to preview how the map maker has represented the bush. For a world championship, these model events are considered essential.
It's for sure that the World Championship, that's the only thing that counts. It's the event, and it's every second year. you're concentrating that hard, and you have to relax too. So we're trying to make jokes and relax and then concentrate again. And because if you only go around and think about orienteering, you get, it's just blocks up here.
The model event gives some time for a relaxed look at the map and control sites. In some ways, it's a warm-up, as the physical demands of the race to come are extraordinary. The women will run an 8.4 kilometre course with 14 controls. The men's course is 15.2 kilometres with 23 controls. The courses are designed so the women's winner will take about 60 minutes and the men's winner 90 minutes. Only the drawing of start times remains. Who is ahead of whom? And who is behind the favourites? Coaches, press and runners are keenly interested in the outcome of the draw.
Ross Clayton, Great Britain. $11 Terry Farrell, Australia. At 12 Aki Jonsson, Sweden.
They said it was going to be dark this morning. A little bit, so.
Hi, how are you? I made it. You got a bed?
Race day begins on a bus, destination unknown. A runner can be certain of being on time once on the bus, but beyond that, curiosity and concentration.
Well, man, what do you reckon?
A dobro se odgovaraju.
If you're mapping it, magnificent place to come out to.
The pre-start assembly area is out of sight of the start point. 2 minutes before a runner's start time, they leave this enclosure and follow streamers for 70 metres. A map without a course on it can be viewed here. On the time signal, the competition map can be taken from the post. This map has the course printed on it. In another part of the forest, the first woman has also started. Those yet to start are still travelling by bus or preparing and warming up at pre-start. The waiting must not produce anxiety. Experience and self-confidence are called on. Calmness and concentration are required.
Concentration, it's not something you can make happen, it's just something that comes. And the hard part about making sure that there's going to be concentration for me is just making sure that I'm thinking the right things at the start, and to ensure that I know what orienteering is and how I feel about it. Once you're out in the forest, you're just curious about what happens and where you're going, and it's just something that flows. So long as before the race you're not thinking about things which interrupt orienteering. Before the start of a race, I imagine I'm right in the middle of the race already, and it's just a feeling really. I suppose it's just a feeling which mirrors orienteering. There's no worries about the people around you and no worries about who you're going to catch up to or who's behind you, and it's just the feeling of orienteering, going from one to the other. If I start to get worries about things, I'll just say that I know I can find all the controls and I know I can orienteer, and that's fine, okay, so I'll just go and do it.
Things can go wrong in the forest. It's not too hard to just miss a control. The organisers have covered almost every possibility. Each control is manned by radio operators who relay the runners' times at each control to the finish. They'll be there until the last runner goes through. Their broadcast allows the race's progress to be monitored at the finish.
I realised that I had two grey rock areas to look at on the map. I could see them in the terrain. And from there, I didn't really check my compass, and I looked roughly in the direction where I thought the boulder was, and I saw a boulder which was part of sort of, a group of rocks, and I thought that was the boulder.
There was a huge potential for disaster on the way to Control 5. I needed to take a good compass bearing to get across the flat, vague ground. I'd aimed to end up in the gully just to the right of the control.
Progress times or splits are coming in at the finish. The first finishers are due now.
Yes, and Sweden's also gone through that first split control on the women's course. We're waiting for
everyone here. Every second counts. Okay, put it in. First man finishing. First man throws. Last counted, 101 minutes, and rounded up 30 seconds.
Going to 5, I went through the cleared area and then I took a track which was running north, or no, actually south of the clearing, and I was hoping to catch a gully and use that to come into the control. But in that stage, I wanted to look ahead, and as I was looking ahead, I didn't quite pick the gully, and I kept running until I saw a fairly large cliff above the track, and there I realised right away that I'd overshot and I missed the gully.
Just turning round would have solved the problem here.
Fantastic time for Egil Eversen of Norway, 90 minutes at the moment. 90 minutes, that's very close to the bottom end of the expected winning time. Egil Eversen of Norway, what a great run. 90 minutes, look at him push it out to the line. Egil Eversen of Norway, great run. Well, that's only got to take a power and beat his day, I'd say.
On the way to 5, I'd broken my compass. So I had to work harder and read the map much more carefully. I had to keep in close contact with the terrain.
Good effort, well run, Madeline. Copy records in the window. One great flying, who goes to That's the fastest time so far on the men's course by 5.5 to 6 minutes. And I think you'd be right up there with a good chance for the top 10 or 15 places at least. Good run, Martin. Well done. Nearly in. 10 seconds to go, 102 minutes. Good run, Martin. Well run, well run. The 9-minute control now. We've got number 155, Littleburg. 9-minute control, and 152, and Extra Daly is there as well, the Kiwi. Finisher at the second department, Well done, well run, you're nearly there, not far to go now. Listen, Eastermont from Canada, number 158, finishing it up. And just behind it, Jim Anderson, 157. 21 Sekunden. And Yuki Osada from Japan, just about to cross the finish line. Here's Anakin now. Where's the time for Anakin? We want Anakin's time back on that scoreboard. Come on! 1.6 on that scoreboard. What's the time for Anakin? There it is, 54 minutes and 9 seconds. He's got it. So far, 54.
Anniken Kringstad of Sweden wins her third successive World Championship. She's been remarkably consistent. Consistency pays in orienteering, at all levels.
Number 12, Morris Ongania. It's Kia Morrissey. Give a big hand. Go on, Morris. Nearly there. Go, Morris. Go, Morris. 114,
Well, carry on a bit.
Give it up, man.
Cornelia Moore.
For Morris, today's run was exhausting, but despite his weariness, the progress of his competitors is important to him.
The third place on the board, Charlotte China in 62.42. So those been two great times, 59.41 for Karen Raby and 62.42 for Charlotte China of Denmark.
In a world championship, the best runners cover the ground in 5 to 6 minutes per kilometre. As an athletic feat, that's remarkable. Not only have they run fast, they've navigated as well.
Okay, second split for Nikolainen, Finland.
At this stage of the men's race, 90 minutes looked like being the winning time. 2 Norwegian runners have finished just over that mark. There is exciting news from the forest. At least one runner still on the course can be quicker. One runner with better split times. Only time would tell if he could keep it up. The radio operators calculate. The crowd calculates. Has he the concentration? Will he make an error? In 88 minutes and 8 seconds, a double victory. The World Championship to Kari Salinen, the first time Finland has held the men's title. Every sport has its champions and competitors. In orienteering, the gap between the two is less. The winners here were not only Anniken and Kari, but Australia and the sport. When the winners depart with their trophies, the maps and the talent to stage this event remains. To the sport in Australia, these are the real prizes.
Well, it gives me great pleasure to call on the Deputy Chairman of the Australian Sports Commission.
The painstaking effort that produced the maps will be appreciated again and again by local orienteers. Combine this with the lessons learned by those who contributed to the organisational effort which staged these championships, and the future is assured. Observation and concentration, curiosity and discovery. Orienteering fosters these. The thought sport, cunning running. Whatever name you give it, it's the participant who sets the pace. The championships have left a legacy of understanding that will maintain that pace. The sport has broadened, and there are plenty of eager learners to help it develop.
Number 2 from number 3 made a bit of a mistake. I went down this way instead of up there, and I went on to about here, and I saw that building and thought, what the heck's that doing here for? So I looked at the map and I realised where it was, so I went all the way back past number 2, then up to number 3, number 3 to number 4. I just followed the track around and found that pretty easily. Number 4 to number 5, just followed this track up. 5 to 6, I sort of followed this gully up, and then I turned and found the track junction.